Hope you all are doing well. Thanks for stopping back on my channel. If you're here for the first time, my name's Robert Hall. I'm a photographer from Southeast Michigan. Make tons of videos about photography and lighting equipment, so if you're into that sort of thing, then consider hitting the subscribe button. Today, I'm kind of bouncing back to a topic that I explored in a recent video in which I was in here testing a bunch of different light modifiers because I had a shoot that was very demanding where I needed to throw light a really far distance and a lot of power because I needed to balance with bright conditions. At the end of that last video, I spoke about a light modifier out there called the PCB Retro Laser, and I spoke about it being a possibility for being one of the brightest options in terms of a modifier out there. But the problem was I couldn't just turn around and buy it because that thing has been discontinued for years. But we got one. Right here is the PCB Retro Laser and is going to be the subject of today's video. This is undoubtedly like the coolest perk that I've ever experienced of YouTube. Me looking all over the internet. I looked at all these different forums. I looked at eBay. I looked at like PCB forums and sub-forums of photography websites and even things like Reddit. I did everything I could to try to find one of these available for purchase, but it's so specialized and it's been discontinued forever that it is almost impossible to find. I even searched for alternatives, one of the only alternatives being a Broncolor satellite, which is somewhere in the $3,000 department, and was just something I was unwilling to purchase for what is really a passion project. So me actually having this here today means a few thank yous are in order. First, thank you Mark Kideoka, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Mark has a blog post, I've linked it in the description below, where he goes over using various long throw reflectors. And first off, he had the Glow Magnum reflector in there, which is even brighter apparently than these softbox that I ended up using. And then he also had some sample shots using this. And his sample shot with it shows it being brighter than any of the other long throw reflectors out there. So Mark's blog post is the only reason that I had ever heard of this, for this to ever be on my radar, and the reason that I was able to request it. Lastly, David, I'm not going to mention your last name because I don't know how you are in terms of privacy. I'm so happy that my video happened to cross your computer screen and you had one of these that you didn't need and you were able to send it to me. So I really appreciate that as well. All right, so let's talk about this bad boy because it is a very peculiar modifier. On the surface, it looks extremely simple. I mean, it's just a dish. It's the specific shape of the dish that allows it to reflect light out in a very, very tight pattern. The shocking part about this potentially being brighter than any long throw reflector is in a long throw reflector, your bulb is exposed. Like that direct, harshest light is aiming right at your subject, and then it's just being concentrated further by the reflector. But this is actually an indirect modifier. You can see the center of it is completely closed off, and then you put this little attachment here, then you mount your light to it, so your light source is actually facing into the modifier. But that's the shocking part to me, is that even though your light is directly in the center, it manages to bounce all of that light back out around the strobe that is obstructing it into a very tight pattern. And you have some control of that pattern. We can bring this in and out to bring the bulb closer to the back here to create a tighter beam of light. It's not bowens, and that's an issue because all of my lights are bowens. I could use an adapter here, but this thing is designed so specifically to bounce the light around. So any added distance where I'm pulling that bare bulb further away from it is going to probably reduce the efficiency of this. So I really don't want to use an adapter. So we're trying two things out today. First, I took a standard bowens attachment that I had just laying around, and I drilled 3 holes into it and basically took apart one of the PCB ones and just put the rods in there and then put the nuts down. But the problem with that is because there is a little lip to this bowens speed ring, that unfortunately means the alignment of these nuts is on an angle now, and I really can't get them as tight as I would like, at least not, you know, the point where I'm going to be putting a 4-pound modifier on it. Thankfully though, I have this behemoth, which is a 28-inch beauty dish. We ain't talking about what brand though. Actually, I've teased people enough times about this. I guess I'll just spill the details about this beauty dish. This was planned on being released, but then canceled, but it was too close to the IP of a brand you may have heard of called Mola, who makes these really unique beauty dishes. Therefore, it could not be sold in the US, so I struck a deal to acquire it. But that's not important. What is important is this. This is the Cheetah stand low profile bowens mount. Might not be perfect, but I'm sure you guys get a little sense of the difference. That's gonna give me at least a 1/2 inch extra, maybe even more. On top of that, it doesn't suffer the same rounded lip right here. You can see it's completely flat and it's much thicker, which might actually be a negative in this situation. So we're gonna try to drill some holes through this one too, and we'll take apart this mount, attach these, and we'll find out how much of a difference it makes using the low profile bowens mount over the standard bowens mount. We managed to fashion the bowens mount, low profile bowens mount, to it. It looks really awkward because we had to bend this enough just for these to go through and for these nuts to actually sit flush and hold it in place. And I still have the one that I did at home as well, which I don't know that I'd even care to use this because I think over time, especially when I have this mounted on a boat, it's going to be rumbling and eventually these nuts are going to pop off. So this is much more secure. That might even make it a little bit more permanent of an installation since I have 2 of these. But yeah, we got it all mounted up. One thing I will say is it barely fits over the 80-1200's bulb. I mean, the bulb is just so huge that the glass housing is almost touching the rods. So missed that by a narrow margin. It does work, it does function as promoted, and it is a very narrow light pattern over a long distance, and it is far more powerful than the Colt 45 reflector. And if my math is right, it's still about a full stop more powerful than even the 20-inch softbox that I found was brighter than this Colt 45 in the last video. I need to gain probably about 2 stops in order for this to work, and we got 1 stop here. Now the second stop I plan on gaining is through using hypersync instead of high speed sync. So last time I had to use high speed sync because I was balancing with bright outdoor conditions and I'm trying to freeze action at the same time. So I tried high speed sync last time, which just means I lost about another 1.2 stops of light. At least in what I've tested, I lose about 1 full stop of light on the 80-1200 Pro when it goes into high speed sync, which is actually really good. Most flashes lose closer to 2, some even higher than that. If I use instead hypersync, and I'm using this at full power, I should gain back that other full stop. And then I'll be right where I need to be. I'll have gained 2 full stops of light over my first experience. So I should be able to create the images that I'm looking to make. So now I want to show you guys the light pattern control that you have with this. So I have just the modeling lamp going, and right now I'm going to zoom the modifier in a bit. So we're bringing the flash tube closer to the back, and I can create this really tight pattern. And I'm about 12 feet away. So this is really close to the 11-degree pattern that we were looking for. Now the curious thing is that the most power I found actually occurs when it's a little bit wider, which works fine for me because that just means I can cover a wider area. You would think that this would be the brightest spot, but that wasn't the case. All right, so I'm not sure how Mr. Buff managed to make this happen. I don't really get the mathematics beyond all this, but I'm happy that I didn't have to buy a Broncolor satellite modifier for $3,500 just to bring this vision that I have going on into reality. All right, thanks again to the people I mentioned at the beginning of the video who actually put this on my radar. And thank you to David for selling me your copy of this. I'm so happy that I can put this to work. So I will update you guys again after I complete my next wakeboarding shoot, and hopefully we have some better results than last time. All right, take it easy, guys.